Many of our viewers will remember that fateful day in June, actually, of 2015, when we heard the news of a racially motivated mass shooting at Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, where 9 innocent lives were lost during a Bible study. And in that number of 9, your mother, Sharona Coleman Singleton, only 45 years of age at the time, was one of the precious souls lost. What did that do to you as a young man?
Man, well, it was, being thrown into the fire for me, 18 years old. And, something like that, I call it the unthinkable, because you never think in a million years something like that would happen to you until it does. It was tough then. It's tough now, and I'm sure it's going to be tough in the future. But it changed me. It made me, grow up quicker than a lot of people, taking care of 2 teenagers when I'm not even 21 yet. And life changed for me totally after I lost my mom that night.
Now, you describe yourself as not necessarily walking with Jesus or having a faith that you could really cling to up to that point in your life. You were kind of doing the teenage thing, kind of living life for yourself, enjoying yourself. But you said that moment when you were faced with the loss of your mother under such tragic circumstances, it did something to your faith. What happened?
Yeah, man, I think anybody that loses a loved one while they're praying in church, right? My mom was shot 8 times while she was praying. I think there's 2 ways you can go with your faith. You could say, number 1, there's no way God is real. Or you can say, 2, God, I don't know how this happened or why this happened, but I need you to get me through it. And I went with the latter, and things changed for me, right? The relationship became real. I didn't just call myself a believer. I actually started seeking a relationship daily, pouring into the word for the first time for myself, not just listening to my pastor or my mom as she would read me scriptures in the car, and I'm listening to music like most teenagers do. But the relationship became real for me. And because of that, I'm able to be where I am today, share the things that I share about, all because of the things God has placed on my heart.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what would you say it is about your relationship with Jesus that helped you get through that tragic event and continue to process it even 6 years later?
Yeah, I'd say mainly, didn't have my mom anymore, didn't have my dad. And so Jesus became the rock that I would lean on, right? I think up until that point, I was an athlete, right? And it was just be strong, be courageous all the time. And for me, the vulnerability I found was when I was able to just talk to Jesus at night and just pray and just let those emotions out. And that was comforting for me. It was therapeutic for me. And I think that in itself helped me to kind of, maneuver through those really, really tough times. And now to this day, I feel like God's leading me. My daily prayers are asking for wisdom. My mom used to always tell me to read the book of Proverbs. So every month I try to read it in entirety. And so just filling myself up with things like that so I can pour back out to other people in some ways that I try to get it done.
Now, the young man that was found guilty, charged with numerous counts of first-degree murder, racially motivated, is going to spend pretty much the rest of his life behind bars. I mean, the big question for me, I'm sure for most of our viewers, is how do you get to that point of forgiveness, and if you even can? Because, I mean, we could talk about a 5-step program, and we can write books about it. We can even dig deep into the theology of forgiving our debtors. But when we're faced with that decision, much like you have been faced with, how is that even possible for you?
I honestly think it's a modern day miracle, right? When I forgave my mother's killer the day after my mom was killed. And so for me, I didn't think about doing it. I didn't say these are the 7 steps to do it. God placed it on my heart. I said those words and kind of surprised myself. But now I realize why forgiveness was placed on my heart, because of the power in it. Recently somebody asked me, Chris, where's your mother's killer being held? And I have no idea. And I think forgiveness has freed me from constantly thinking about the person that caused so much pain in my life. Forgiveness has freed me from trying to get revenge. Forgiveness has freed me from all these different things. It's freed me from hating white people, right? It freed me from so many different things. And I know why God placed it on my heart. And every single day I have the opportunity now to share about it, because now I'm able to be the best husband that I can be, the best father that I can be. And I know that there's no way I could do those things if I was constantly holding that grudge and wanting to get revenge after what happened to me and my family.
How have you seen God work out that forgiveness in you in your day-to-day life? And what have you seen as in terms of fruit in your life as a result of that forgiveness you were willing to extend?
Yeah, I think number one, it's given me a new perspective on life. I'm 25 years young, going through so much, having to grow up super early, taking care of, teenagers as a 20-year-old and finally seeing my little brother graduate this year. But I think mainly it just gave me the hope that, yes, bad things can happen to you, but you don't have to stay there forever, right? And I think, whenever I talk to non-believers, they'll say, Chris, you've gone through so much. How in the world do you still believe? And I always say, the Bible doesn't say it's going to be easy. I just know that there's another in the fire that's always there with me. I think going through the things I've gone through and now forgiveness for me has allowed me to keep moving forward in my life. I don't think I'll ever be able to, quote unquote, move on, but I can move forward. And that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Amidst all of this going on in your life in 2015, you move on to the pros. In 2017, you played with the Chicago Cubs, or you played in the minor leagues there. And now you work with athletes, you're working in your community coaching baseball. But tell us a little bit now about what you find yourself especially passionate about.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. I'm no longer on the field, and people say, they introduced me as a retired 25-year-old. It's a nice way to say I got cut, right? I love the Cubs, but after I got released, I just followed my passion, which was then sharing this message of unity. I get the opportunity to speak to, professional teams across the U.S., like the Houston Texans, like the Washington Wizards, Minnesota Timberwolves, and many others about unity and what that looks like. How do people use their influence to bring people closer together, right? I always say we don't always have to gather around the campfire and sing country songs or sing Keith Urban, right? Maybe I want to sing Usher, but I should look at somebody and say, because they're God's child, they're my brother, they're my sister, regardless of what they look like or what their first language may be. And so that's the message that I get to share across the country and around the world now. And I'm just blessed that God has been able to, open up the doors for me to be able to do so.
And he's blessed you indeed. I know you've authored some great children's books. You're a best-selling author. You've got 2 titles, Your Life Matters and Different, about the beauty of diversity and loving our neighbors. What is so important, because they're geared towards children. I want to ask you, what is so important about children in your quest to be able to bring unity and reconciliation? Why are they so key?
Man, we always say it, right? It's up to the next generation. We've been saying that for generations. But the key is not only did the kids get the message, in these books, the parents are reading it to them, which I think a lot of people miss. And so the conversations that they'll have with the discussion questions when they ask a kid, hey, did you choose where you were born, or did you choose your first language, right? When we're celebrating kids from all over the country, I think it's what, honestly, man, as a believer, I think, heaven's a melting pot of people from all over the world. And so I think in these books that I'm writing, I want that to be what's shown to these kids. Mm-hmm. And also, I always said my story is so sad, right? And I share it with companies and, sports teams, but I never felt like I could tell an 8-year-old, how I lost my mom. I feel like it would take away their innocence, but the mission is still there. And that's how I'm able to keep spreading the word through these kids' books.
And diversity is such a beautiful picture of what heaven is going to be like. And I think we lose sight of that so often in this journey, like in the here and now. I want to ask you, because your books really drive this point home that we need to love our neighbors. How do we effectively love our neighbor, Chris?
Yeah, well, number one, I used to always do this example of, number one, I would just have people hug one another that don't look like each other, right? So if you're a black person, if you're a white person, if you're a Latino person, if you're an Asian, I would just say hug them for the first time, because so many people have never given somebody a hug that looks different than them. And I think that's a little, that's weird if we're always talking about loving people. Let's still start with the hug, right? Affection. If we can't do that, then I would also say make sure you hear somebody's story before you hear their opinion. The reason why I say that is because so often we jump to conclusions based on somebody's stance on something, forgetting that they have a story behind it, just like we have a story behind ours. So when I go into a conversation, I want to love people. I want to know about them. I want to learn their story, because then those stereotypes and the things that those unconscious biases that I may not even realize I have, maybe the walls would drop once I hear their story. And I hope the same if they hear mine.
Those are some strong, powerful, impactful words, Chris. I want to draw attention to the fact that you and your wife, Mariana, you still live in Charleston. You have a son, CJ. You have one on the way. What is your prayer for CJ and his generation as we move forward?
Yeah, well, man, the prayer is simple. I pray this all the time, but I just pray that people would love one another regardless of where they're from or what they look like. We realize there's so many things we don't control in this life, like my skin color, right, or my first language. But we can always love people regardless of those things. I pray that for my son. I pray that for every single kid. And I'm also praying that for the adults as well.